Salem witch trials 1692 to 1693. The essence of the event. In the town of Salem, Massachusetts, there was an outbreak of mass hysteria due to accusations of witchcraft. Why it's interesting. Demonstrates how dangerous a mixture of superstition, fear, and lack of evidence can be. The story of how fake accusations lead to tragic consequences. Key points. A group of girls began claiming to have been bewitched, leading to a series of trials and death sentences. The Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman, 19th century. The Underground Railroad was a network of secret routes and hiding places that thousands of enslaved African Americans used to escape from the southern slave states to the free northern states or Canada. Harriet Tubman escaped from slavery and became one of the most famous leaders of the Underground Railroad. She personally helped save more than 300 people. This story reveals the theme of civil rights, courage, and solidarity. The Battle of the Alamo, 1836, and the struggle for Texas independence. The essence of the event. The siege of the missionary Fort Alamo lasted 13 days during the Texas Revolution against Mexico. Why it's interesting. It became a symbol of heroism and self-sacrifice. Although the defenders of the Alamo died, their resilience inspired the rest of the rebels. And soon Texas gained independence and later became part of the United States. Famous figures. Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie. Legendary American heroes of the time. The American Civil War 1861 to 1865. The essence of the event. A bloody conflict between the North, Union, and the South, Confederacy, caused by issues of slavery, states' rights, and economic contradictions. Key battle, Gettysburg 1863, was a turning point in the war. Why it's interesting. It laid the groundwork for the abolition of slavery, 13th Amendment, and gave impetus to the centralized development of the country. Famous figures. Abraham Lincoln, President. Robert E. Lee, Confederate General. Ulysses S. Grant, Union General. Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869. The essence of the event. Connected the west and east coasts of the United States. The work was carried out in difficult conditions, often with the involvement of immigrants, especially Chinese. Why it's interesting. Significantly accelerated the colonization of the Wild West, stimulated economic development, and changed the movement of people. Epic moments. The Golden Spike during the ceremonial connection of the tracks in Utah. The Great Chicago Fire, 1871. The essence of the event. According to legend, the Chicago Fire was caused by a cow that knocked over a lantern in a barn. In a little more than 2 days, the fire destroyed a large part of the city. Why it's interesting. The fire was a disaster, but it led to a global rebuilding of Chicago. The introduction of new fire safety standards and architectural innovations, skyscrapers. Myth versus reality. There are different versions of the origin of the fire, and there is still no definitive answer. The Wright brothers' first air trip, 1903. The essence of the event. Orville and Wilbur Wright invented the first airplane with a heavier-than-air engine. Their first successful flight took place on December 17, 1903, in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Why it's interesting. They ushered in the age of aviation and air transportation, changing the global economy and the way people moved around. A symbol of progress. The Wright brothers' invention showed the world that the impossible becomes possible through a combination of scientific approach and fierce perseverance. Prohibition and gangsters, 1920 to 1933. The essence of the event. The 18th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution banned the production and sale of alcohol in the country. Consequences. The flourishing of underground bars, speakeasies, smuggling, and organized crime. Famous gangsters like Al Capone. Why it's interesting. It shows how the government's attempt to clean up society led to the opposite result, creating an entire shadow economy. The Great Depression and the New Deal, 1930s. The essence of the event. The economic crisis that began with the 1929 stock market crash, Black Thursday. Millions of Americans lost their jobs and livelihoods. Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. President Roosevelt initiated a series of economic reforms and social programs designed to restore the economy and support the population. Why it's interesting. An example of radical government action during a large-scale crisis and the beginning of the modernization of the American economy. The Civil Rights Movement, 1950s and 1960s. The essence of the event. African Americans opposed racial segregation and discrimination, fighting for equal rights. Famous leaders. Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, Rosa Parks. Why it's interesting. radically changed the social structure of the United States, led to the adoption of civil rights laws, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and set the tone for further movements for equality.